We are in business, sorry.
All right, so just a notification of recording. And we'll continue to the next slide.
Hang on. 1 second, I don't know why this is not moving, okay. Yep.
Perfect. So tonight's agenda, we'll start with introductions, Zoom directions. We will welcome the MBTA General Manager, Philip Eng. I will be giving the RTAG co-chair update. System-wide accessibility updates will be given by Laura Brailsford, the Assistant General Manager. Bike policies and bike lanes near bus stops will be given by Laura Brailsford, Mike Mueller, Robert Guptill, Catherine Quigley from the MBTA. We will have a brief presentation on Boston Brakes given by Colleen Flanagan from the Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities. She is the Outreach and Engagement Specialist. And then we will have our feedback discussion session. Next slide. All right, for Zoom directions and our ASL interpreters, tonight we have Carrie McSwain and Tom Lauterborn here as ASL interpreters. To view their video, find the interpreter's video in the gallery. In the top right corner of the interpreter's video, click the ellipses, then click the pin video option. This will keep the interpreter's video on your screen. Next slide. Zoom directions for CART captioning. Our CART captioner tonight is Denise Gracia. To start viewing closed captioning, click closed caption with the CC icon. A tip is to click and drag the closed captioning to move its positioning in the meeting window. To adjust the caption size, click the upward arrow next to start video / stop video. Click video settings, then accessibility, and move the slider to adjust the caption size. Next slide. Zoom directions for using the chat for technical questions. If you have a technical question about Zoom or the features of the meeting, please use the chat function. Our technical assistant will attempt to troubleshoot your problem and get back to you. Next slide. I believe that can we go one more slide? We will be having the general manager give his update. I'm very excited to introduce MBTA's new general manager, Phil Eng, who joined the T roughly 3 months ago. I had the opportunity to hear the general manager speak at Judge King's recent meeting regarding the accessibility settlement agreement, and happy to welcome him to his first RTAG meeting. General Manager.
Well, thank you so much, Kat, and thank you to everyone. Good evening, all. Yes, I am Phil Eng, and I am super proud to be here at the T, and I'm pleased to be here with everyone tonight. As everyone may be aware, as you mentioned, Kat, I did join 3 months ago, appointed to the role of general manager, taking over from Jeff Gonaville, serving as interim general manager, and it's a pleasure to know that what Jeff had done, and this is a part of this key area, is something I want to build upon. I think maybe some of you have heard me speak earlier this month. Kat, you mentioned the public meeting focused on the status of our accessibility settlement agreement. But for those of you not able to join, I would like to share a little bit of my background. I did spend 5 years at the MTA when I first joined as the MTA Chief Operating Officer. And in that role, I oversaw operations at all of the agencies within the MTA, and that was New York City Transit, that was Metro North, that was Long Island Railroad, that was Bridges and Tunnels, Staten Island Railway. And that was an exciting time. But then I had the opportunity to go on and become the acting president of New York City Transit. And that included the bus facilities, their accessibility folks, and their all of the efforts that were going on there to improve accessibility of their system. I think for far too long, that was not always a focus, and proud to be part of turning things around there to make that much more of a priority at stations and in our system. And when I had the luxury, or the pleasure, I should say, the honor of going to become president of Long Island Railroad, I was able to continue all of those efforts, and in getting accessibility, making that a priority at all of the stations of Long Island Railroad, doing things where we created what we called Long Island Railroad Care. It was a means of helping folks that needed a little extra attention and getting on and off our system. And it was something that we took from a very short period where nobody would use the call ahead system to where thousands of people were using Long Island Railroad Care. And, it's those types of things that I hope I can bring and support here at the MBTA. And I realize that I am joining at a time when the MBTA is facing significant challenges from staffing shortages across all of our functional areas at the agency to aging infrastructure. And all of these factors are resulting in service that is not as reliable as it should be, and obviously impacting our riders, frustration to our riders, and impacting the service that we provide them. But please know, my top focus over the coming months will be to help and support the team here at the MBTA so that we can all better address these issues, rebuilding trust with our customers, improving the level of service that the customers expect and deserve, including accessibility. And with regards to that, I have had a number of opportunities to meet with Laura Brailsford from SWA, as well as Michelle Styler, who oversees the ride. A little fun fact, I know Michelle's husband, Al, from back in MTA. And in order to learn about ongoing efforts at the ride system, I look forward to having more opportunity to talk to Michelle here. Additionally, I've gotten to hear from a number of riders who share their experience with the accessibility of our system, both good and not so good. But that's important to me to hear, so I can make sure that we are driving the system where we need to go. These stories and perspectives are very helpful to me and our internal team as we move forward and continue to move the needle in this important area. And I look forward to working with everyone with RTAG and hearing from your membership over the months to come. I understand that this evening's focus will be various bike-related policies and their impacts on accessibility. But please know that we're committed to building systems, infrastructure, and policies that help ensure that everyone has safe and accessible access to transit, and working with our municipal partners to collaborate on a variety of important design decisions as we progress and move the needle. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Kat. I'll turn things back over to you. I know you have a very robust agenda.
Thank you so much, Mr. General Manager. Can we please share the slides again? Perfect, thank you. So I will be giving the RTAG update on behalf of our RTAG co-chairs today, who unfortunately cannot be here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. The Riders Transportation Access Group, also known as RTAG, is a community-based group that advises the MBTA on transportation matters impacting people with disabilities and older adults. Our goal is to ensure that all people with disabilities and older adults have every opportunity to be fully participating members of our community, noting that fundamental to this opportunity is the right and ability to use public transportation in an equal, effective, and dignified manner. We're very excited to have had MBTA General Manager Philip Eng introduce himself today, along with members of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities, and local cities join us tonight for our unique discussion on the challenges of creating a system that promotes both accessibility and bike safety. We're also happy to welcome Colleen Flanagan from the Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities to discuss the Boston Breaks campaign, to raise awareness of the needs of people with disabilities using bike shared spaces. This meeting will be structured as a listening session. If you have any questions regarding policy or design standards, Laura Brailsford will raise her hand if she can provide a response. We look forward to hearing your feedback and hope this discussion encourages everyone to work together to travel safely throughout our city. Next slide, please. And now we will hand it over to Laura Brailsford, the Assistant General Manager of System-Wide Accessibility, for their update.
Thanks so much, and good evening, everyone. I am Laura Brailsford from the Department of System-Wide Accessibility here at the T. I'm really happy to be with you all again tonight. Before we get to our topic of the evening, specifically bikes and accessibility considerations, I did just want to cover a couple general updates on behalf of my team. First, as the month of June comes to a close, we are looking forward to the, believe it or not, the 33rd anniversary of the ADA, which is coming up in just a few weeks on July 26th. A meeting like this is the perfect time to take a second to recognize the importance of the ADA. It is a gross understatement to say that the MBTA would not be as usable, safe, and accessible for all of our riders if it were not for the ADA, and thanks to the many, many individuals who advocated for its passage, and just as importantly, for its ongoing enforcement. Because of all of the progress the MBTA has made thanks to legislation like this, we are in a position to springboard into even more progress over the next 5 years. In that time period, we have over 25 inaccessible stations that are funded to be made fully accessible. As many folks know, we are in the process of fully rolling out all new red and orange line vehicles on our system. These are our most accessible subway cars to date. And relatedly, we are just beginning to move forward with the procurement and design and procurement of our brand new Green Line trolley, a car that will be 100% low floor, and it will eventually allow us to achieve level boarding on the Green Line. We're also going to be rolling out lots more bus shelters, benches, and accessible real-time information at our bus stops, as well as more audio and visual displays throughout our stations that broadcast important information like service alerts, including elevator and escalator information. And finally, we are going to be continually updating our trainings for frontline staff, for our bus operators, our motor persons, our station agents, so that they are getting feedback, much of which comes directly from many of you on what are the best ways to be available to provide assistance when it's needed. So we are very much looking forward to that and engaging with you all as we do it. Next slide. So speaking of the ADA, the Mayor's Commission on People with Disability will be again hosting a in-person celebration to mark the day. It's going to be happening on July 18th at Boston City Hall Plaza. The event is always a lot of fun with food, music, and a lot of community groups sharing information, as well as free t-shirts, which we always take advantage of. As always, the MBTA will have a table there. My team will be there. In addition, we will be bringing one of our newest buses to serve as a cool place to hang out, a cool and dry place to hang out if you want to get out of the weather. We will also have one of our bus instructors as well as one of our travel trainers there to talk to more if you want to learn more about the accessibility of our buses or really any groups of our service. So please, if you're able to join, come by and say hi to our team. We very much look forward to seeing you. Next slide. And you can register for the day itself. I think this is where the free t-shirts may come in. There's a QR code on the right side of the screen. Or you can find more information about the event and registration on Boston's website by going to boston.gov/calendar. Next slide. And always just want to remind everyone, if you want to learn more about accessibility in general at the T, we have a ton of information on our website. MBTA.com accessibility is a great first stop if you want to learn more about various accessibility options throughout the system. You can also join us at the next RTAG meeting, which will be the first following a brief summer hiatus. That meeting is scheduled for September 14th at 3 o'clock. Or if you are somebody that plans way ahead, our next meeting to discuss the status of our accessibility settlement agreement, the Daniels Feingold settlement, that will be on December 6th in the evening. We also put out every 6 months a complete report of all of the major initiatives happening to improve accessibility in our system. And you can find that at mbta.com/SWA-initiatives. And finally, at any point as you're out there writing our system or preparing to write our system, if you have a question, a complaint, or an accommodation, we really want to hear about it. You could call our call center at 617-222-3200. You can also fill out an online comment form by going to mbta.com and clicking on support at the top of the webpage. Or you can always tweet us by tweeting at MBTA. Any accessibility related complaints automatically gets forwarded to my team. And our role really is to track the complaint to make sure that it is investigated. And that folks are given an adequate response, an appropriate response. All right, next slide. All right, and also one more last way to stay informed. Every month we also put out a virtual newsletter. If you'd like to sign up at that, there's also another QR code on the screen, or you can go to mbta.com/SWA sign up. You should also note these slides are online, and at any point you can use the URLs within the presentation to go to these pages. All right, next slide. Okay, so I want to take a couple minutes to briefly introduce the topic that RTAG invited us to speak about this evening, and that is really the universe of bikes and their accessibility, their impact on the accessibility of MBTA services. So a few of my colleagues and I are going to be talking through a variety of bike-related policies and sharing a little bit of information about how we get engaged with conversations with our municipal partners about bike lanes adjacent to bus stops. I want to say at the outset that both MassDOT and the MBTA, as the GM mentioned in his remarks, are absolutely committed to building infrastructure and policies that support safe travel for everyone, whether you're driving in a car, whether you are a pedestrian, whether you're a cyclist, or whether you are a transit user. At the MBTA, we are very committed to making sure that all of our riders and anyone, using or near our system is safe. As we are rolling out, as we are developing policies, including those related to bikes, we have that in mind at all times. And we are also very careful to constantly be evaluating the potential impacts on our riders, including those of us with disabilities. Ultimately, it is really our goal to make sure that people that we are encouraging and promoting, people walking, people wheeling, whether that's on a bike or whether that's in a chair, and people using transit. So finding the right policies and roadway designs are really key to that. So we wanted to open the conversation tonight by just walking through what we have in place today. And then primarily our role this evening will be to listen to your experiences and the feedback you have to share. All right, so to kick us off, next slide. Just briefly wanted to cover our policy on bikes on our MBTA buses. So generally, bikes are not allowed on an MBTA bus. However, all non-electric T buses are equipped with a bike rack on the front of the bus that can hold 2 conventional bikes. In the photo on the right hand of the screen, you can see a gentleman putting his bike on one of the bike racks on one of our newer buses. We do have a caveat to this policy. There are some very, very limited situations where a customer with a disability may be using a conventional bike as a wheel mobility device to provide balance to them. They are permitted in limited circumstances to bring that bicycle onto the bus. That bike is then required to be fully secured, just like somebody's wheelchair or scooter would be. I do want to emphasize, though, that at no point can anyone, including customers with disabilities, ride their bikes onto vehicles or in stations. They can be sitting and pedaling on the bike at any point while on our property or on our vehicles. Next slide. In terms of bringing someone's bike on the subway, on our heavy rail lines, which are the red, orange, and blue lines, bikes are allowed on the red and orange line during all hours of service, except during the peak hours of travel, which on the red line are 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And on the blue line, those peak hours of service are 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. On the green line and on our Mattapan cars, conventional bikes are not permitted on the Green Line at any time. However, folding bikes are permitted on the Green Line and the Mattapan lines, so long as they are fully folded into the most compact position while on the train. Next slide. And so at this point, I'm going to introduce my colleague who oversees our railroad operations team, and he is going to walk you through the policies of bikes on commuter rail. And his name is Mike Muller, and I'm going to ask him to join me on the screen now. Mike.
Hi, Laura. Thank you. Again, my name is Mike Muller. I'm the Executive Director of Commuter Rail at the T. I'm going to talk a little bit about the bike policy on commuter rail. So the T's longstanding policy on bikes on commuter rail is that bikes are prohibited during the peak hours and the peak direction on all commuter rail trains, with the recent exception of the Fairmount, Greenbush, Kingston, and Middleborough, Lakeville lines. And I'll talk specifically about those 4 lines in a moment. But in general, during the peak period and the peak direction, bikes are prohibited. Bikes are allowed during off-peak hours and on all trains during the weekend. The reason for this is due to the limitations of our vehicle fleet and infrastructure. So the way that our commuter rail coaches are designed, there are designated areas for passengers with disabilities and passengers with bikes. And because not all of our stations have full high-level platforms, at stations where there are mini high platforms, passengers with bikes and passengers with disabilities board from the mini high and are therefore limited to just 1 or 2 coaches, which then puts them in the same limited space. This particularly would become an issue on higher ridership trains at higher ridership times, which are particularly prevalent during the peak periods. So again, these designated areas are the accessible spaces near the car end doors at the ends of the coaches. And this is where there are facilities to secure bikes, and also they're the designated areas for passengers with disabilities. This is in compliance with the ADA and with MBTA policy. Next slide, please. So recently, in 2022, recognizing that on the Fairmount, Greenbush, Kingston, Middleborough, Lakeville lines, we do have full high-level platforms. On the Fairmount line, there's just 1 station that does not have full high-level platforms. That enables passengers with bikes and passengers with disabilities to board any coach at any time. In particular, on the Old Colony lines, where we're operating mostly the newest coach fleet, there's also the automatic doors in use, which makes it even easier. On the Fairmount line, we don't have the automatic doors, but just historically, the lower ridership has avoided any conflicts due to crowding. It's really the high-level platforms that make it bikes on all trains possible on these 4 lines only. But again, bikes are not allowed just anywhere on the train. Bikes must be stored in the designated spaces near the car end doors, which is also the designated area for passengers with disabilities. The key here, and this is true on all lines, anytime.
I have another meeting to go.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for attending. Go ahead, Mike.
So again, on any train, at any time when bikes are allowed on trains, and bikes are stored in the proper location, if that particular space that's occupied by a passenger with a bike is needed for a rider with an accessibility need, then the passenger with the bike will have to move to another designated location. And the conductors on board the trains, who are Keolis employees, our operating contractor, they are trained to have these conversations with passengers and advise and direct passengers when these conflicts between riders with bikes and riders with accessibility needs arise, if needed. Sometimes a simple conversation between the passengers results in the passenger with the bike moving to another location. This is, again, much less of a problem where you have full high-level platforms, because passengers can board any door of any coach at any time in those locations. Next slide, please. So looking to the future and recognizing that the current bike policy and the situations that may arise due to the bike policy are the result of the limitations of our vehicle fleet and infrastructure, we are prioritizing accessibility and bike access anytime we're designing new vehicle fleets and station platforms. So looking forward, all new station designs feature full high-level platforms, and any new vehicle procurements would feature the automatic doors, dedicated bike areas, and where possible, dedicated bike cars, just to avoid having the situation where passengers with bikes and passengers with disabilities and accessibility needs are sharing the same designated areas on the coaches. The other thing that we're doing is exploring additional bike storage facilities at stations, so that where there is not space for bikes on trains, passengers can store their bikes at the station and then board the train without the bike. So longer term, I mean, these are changes that we can't transform the whole system tomorrow to make these changes. These are all part of future designs. Shorter term, we are exploring the additional bike storage facilities at stations now. We're looking to do that soon. And we are monitoring very, very closely as ridership returns post-pandemic, and we start to see some crowding, particularly during peak periods, again, even on those lines where bikes are allowed during the peak period, monitoring complaints, taking anecdotal feedback from customers and from conductors, and we'll make targeted changes as needed.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. I now want to introduce Rob Guptill. Oh, sorry there, Mike. So I will say, so whether you're interested in policies on bike, subway, or bus, subway, or commuter rail, you can find more information at mbta.com/bikes if you're specifically interested in bike policies. All right, at this point, I am pleased to introduce Rob Guptill. Rob is the director of our service planning department. So next slide, Aniko. He is going to be talking with you about bike lanes. I do want to emphasize that, and Rob will be touching on this, that the design of bike lanes is generally the purview of our municipal partners, but certainly the MBTA has a role and is impacted by those decisions. And Rob's going to be talking with you about some of that now. Rob.
Thanks, Laura. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Guptill. I am the Director of Service Planning at the MBTA, and I'm pleased to be here with you tonight. Service Planning is the department that oversees the placement of bus stops. We work with departments such as Laura's System-Wide Accessibility Office, our Safety Office, Bus Operations, and work in conjunction with many of the teams throughout the MBTA who are providing amenities at bus stops such as shelters, real-time signage, fare vending machines, and other amenities such as those. I've been at the T for about 8 years now in my current role. And certainly during that time, I have certainly seen many, many more bike lanes pop up. And as a cyclist myself, I'm happy to see those, but I do recognize that in my professional capacity, that bike lanes sometimes have to be negotiated with other road users, and the MBTA with our buses are one of those road users. The goal overall of this is to ensure safety, both for the cyclist and for pedestrians. And bus riders are pedestrians the moment that they step outside of that bus. And the safety that we are concerned about for bus riders is not limited to just being on when they are riding that bus, but when they get off the bus and when they're waiting for the bus as well. Coming up, the next couple slides, I will present to you various approaches that we've seen over the past couple years about bike lanes and how they interact with bus stops. So with that, next slide, please. So this is what I would say is more of a traditional situation, in that the bike lane is either along the curb or is outside of the parking lane, and the bus will cross the bike lane to serve the curb. Depending on the location of the bus stop, the length of the bus stop varies, anywhere from 60 to 120 feet. And that's so that the bus can pull in accessibly to the curb and deploy its wheelchair ramp and make sure that it's deployed in an accessible manner. There are various other elements that we need when we are serving the sidewalk for things like a shelter. The loading zone needs to be at least 8 feet deep so that the wheelchair ramp has enough room to extend. And anyone in a wheeled mobility device has enough room to navigate that. But essentially, the interaction between buses and bikes, there is an interaction. Obviously, you can see here that when a bus is stopped, it will be in the middle of a bike lane. So bicyclists either have the choice of passing a stopped bus or waiting for the bus to leave the bike lane. Next slide, please. This is a treatment called a floating bus island. This removes the conflict between the bus itself and the bike lane, but does introduce a potential conflict between pedestrians and bicyclists, in that the bus will pull up to this platform that we call here a floating island, floating because the bike lane goes around the platform. It is a safe place for bus riders to wait or get off the bus, but then they must cross the bike lane to get to the sidewalk. And there are various things that we can do to alert bicyclists and pedestrians to the presence of each other. And all those things can improve safety. Things such as warning strips, signage. We can put in fences along the back of the floating island to make sure that people are only crossing at the designated crossing areas. And all the things about accessibility that I talked about in the prior design would still apply here, in that we have to have an accessible landing zone, and the length that a bus stop typically needs is not as long because the bus is stopping what we would say is in lane. It does not need to pull in and out of a parking lane or a bike lane. Next slide, please. This is a design that is not supported by the MBTA. It is called a constrained bus stop. This is where the bus stops and lets passengers out into an active bike lane. Oftentimes we see this design because of constrained road space, and hence the reason why we are calling this a constrained bus stop. However, the MBTA strongly has communicated whenever we see this design that we do not support this, and we work hand in hand with our municipal partners to find alternatives to this situation. And a little bit more information on this design in the next slide, please. So speaking for what the MBTA has officially said, our Office of Chief Engineer has issued a design directive that establishes the constrained bus stop designs is prohibited by the MBTA. And the reason that it is prohibited is due to this conflict between bus rider queuing, boarding and alighting with the bike lane in this physically constrained environment. Certainly, we work with our municipal partners, and if there are no other alternatives, we will certainly have a vigorous debate about this. And it is in my experience that once we have been informed about this, we can find alternatives to this, and we should not be putting forward this design. With that, I think I can hand it over to the next slide and the next presenter. Oh, I'm sorry. One more slide. So in terms of, I've alluded several times to our cooperation with municipalities, and they are, as Laura mentioned, the owners of the sidewalk and the street. So we really operate our buses at the behest of our municipal partners. And I'm glad that I can call them partners, because they really do act that way. They are interested in providing safe and efficient bus service, but they also have the responsibility for thinking about the safety of bicyclists. We work with the teams throughout the municipalities throughout the region, and I can genuinely say that we have great working relationships, and we are far more often than not able to find creative solutions that provide for the safest situation for both bus riders and cyclists. And then the final thing I'll say is that we are currently looking to update our bus stop design guidelines. These are the guidelines that lay out the designs that I just went through, for example, but a host of other issues that affect bus stops. And we're definitely looking at making sure that in the new bus stop design guidelines, we reflect the most up-to-date and accurate information on how the MBTA and bike lanes can interact in a safe and efficient manner. So with that, Laura, I think I'll hand it back to you.
Rob, thanks so much for that. All right, and finally, I'd like to invite Catherine Quigley from System-Wide Accessibility, our Deputy Director of Strategic Planning, to tell you a little bit about some research we're working on with UMass Amherst to think about how we can make even better recommendations on bike lane designs that while thinking through all of the accessibility considerations. Catherine?
Thank you, Laura. So we have engaged with the University of Northeastern and UMass Amherst in a partnership through MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning, which manages federal funds for applied research through the State Planning and Research Program. So we were awarded a grant for 18 months to look at the relationship between accessible bus stop design in the presence of bike lanes. And so the two main objectives of this effort are to investigate the bus rider and bicyclist behavior in these various bus stop layouts. And then the key objective takeaway will be to propose design improvements or suggested elements and the layout for how to have the safest, best experience for riders and cyclists. We're currently working on looking at best practices in Canada and Europe, as well as here in the US, and we're actively seeking participation for focus groups. We just hosted one about a week ago, and we're looking to host another focus group the week of July 10th. If you would like to participate in that, and we strongly encourage participation from anyone and everyone, it would be wonderful if you could email Eleni Christofa. She is the lead investigator from UMass Amherst. She is the civil engineering research lead, and she will help you sign up to participate in that focus group. Oh, she just put her information in the chat. So we would love your participation. we are taking everything that everyone says to heart, and we're going to use the feedback to help inform the guidelines that Rob mentioned for the bus stop design guidelines in the last slide. Thank you.
All right, Catherine, thank you so much. So at this point, want to turn it back to Kat, just so everyone knows my colleagues and I will be here through the end of the meeting to listen to feedback during the comment period. But just want to thank everyone for joining us again tonight. Kat?
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to the team. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Colleen Flanagan, the Outreach and Engagement Specialist at the Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities, to share a brief presentation on the Boston Breaks campaign. Take it away, Colleen.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, RTAG, for the invitation to speak about Boston Breaks, a new initiative to raise awareness of pedestrians with disabilities across Boston's neighborhoods. As Kat mentioned, my name is Colleen Flanagan. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Specialist for the City of Boston's Mayor's Commission for People with Disabilities. New bike lane infrastructure has made Boston residents with disabilities both excited and concerned. Boston Breaks is an initiative that I'm thrilled to introduce to you in a moment that was the idea of the late David Vieira. I know many of you here may remember David. David was a phenomenal advocate for equitable and accessible transportation, especially for people with disabilities. And the Boston Breaks initiative is dedicated to him. So as Boston moves to become a healthier, greener, more resilient city, it's important that the unique needs of people with disabilities are understood. Boston Breaks will raise awareness about the needs of disabled residents and visitors to continue to have clear access to sidewalks, curb cuts, crosswalks, audible pedestrian signals, and on-street HPDV parking spaces. Next slide. Some more images you'll see from Boston Breaks. Next slide. Oh, wait, actually, no, wait. This is the video that I thought it was. I didn't see the little video thing. Now I do. We're going to get a sneak peek into an animation video that will explain Boston Breaks. Here we go.
Legacy, history, and traffic. So naturally, riding your bike is a great way to get around. But it's important to remember to share the space with pedestrians. This includes people with disabilities who face unique challenges when navigating our city. Let's take a look at some of the common safety rules we all should follow. White cane law. When you see a pedestrian walking with a white cane, this indicates that the user is blind or visually impaired. You must come to a complete stop, then allow them to safely cross the street. Bike parking. When parking your bike, leave at least 4 feet for pedestrians to get by. Never block sidewalks, curb ramps, crosswalks, or accessible parking spaces. Poles that designate accessible parking may not be used to lock your bike. Obey traffic laws. When cycling through the city, always give an audible signal before overtaking or passing. Be aware, someone who is deaf or hard of hearing will not know you're approaching, and older adults may not be able to move quickly out of your way. Avoid riding on sidewalks. Always use bike lanes when they're available, and only ride on sidewalks when necessary for safety. This will prevent unnecessary conflict with pedestrians. Yield at curb ramps and crosswalks. When approaching a crosswalk with a curb ramp, always leave the curb cut open for pedestrians. People with disabilities need access to ramps to safely transition off the sidewalk. Those with visual disabilities rely on the yellow, bumpy surface to know they're about to enter the crosswalk. In conclusion, always pay attention to signage throughout the city for your safety and the safety of others. And remember, use caution when navigating alongside pedestrians, especially people with disabilities. Always be ready to yield or stop. The City of Boston. Let's share the space.
So that was a sneak peek into the information that the Boston Breaks initiative will be sharing so that we can share the space and be safe. Because it is all about sharing space and respecting each other's pace. Next slide. finally, I want to make sure you all are enthusiastically invited to ADA Day on July 18th from 12 to 2 on Boston City Hall Plaza, when we officially launch the Boston Breaks initiative. Please come and join us. Check out the swag that we have at Boston Breaks, meet some of our partners in the cyclist community that are working with us to educate the public on the unique needs of people with disabilities. And most importantly, come and celebrate the 33rd anniversary of the ADA and Boston Breaks. To learn more about ADA Day on Boston City Hall Plaza, I'm going to drop a link in the chat. And I'm also going to read the link aloud in case it's easier to access auditorily. Please visit www.boston.gov/calendar/ADA-2023. And I want to thank you once again for inviting the City of Boston's Mayor's Commission for People with Disabilities to share our Boston Breaks initiative with you tonight. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
Oh.
I'm gonna go over this last slide.
Yeah, that's a bonus. The slide that you see on the screen right now is a picture of myself and some others with disabilities. And it has a bullet point that says 84,266 Boston residents identify as having one disability. That is 12% of the city's population. So 12% of the city of Boston's population are people with disabilities. And that's why we want to make sure that this initiative gets far and wide, and that the 12% of those residents' needs are heard and respected. And then, wait, I should say next slide, just in, okay.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
All right, see you all on ADA Day. Thanks again.
Thank you, Colleen. All right, it is now time for our discussion period. Just some quick tips. When called upon, introduce yourself very briefly. Please try to keep your response or feedback limited to 2 to 3 minutes and focused on an example related to bikes and accessibility. And we do want to hear from as many people as possible. So please share one piece of feedback. And if there is time after everyone with their raised hand has shared, you may share again. There are some comments and questions in the chat, so I will be alternating back and forth. And I will start with Deborah McCauley. Oops.
Hi.
One moment, Deborah. I just have some accessibility comments. To indicate you have a question, please use Zoom's raise hand feature located at the bottom of the screen. And when you raise your hand, it does alert the moderator that you'd like to speak. I will unmute attendees to ask questions in the order that they raise their hands. To speak, click reactions, then raise hand. You can use your keyboard with the Alt and Y key buttons. And if you're calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand or *6 to unmute. And we can stop sharing the slides. And go ahead, Deborah.
Hi, yeah. So my name is Debbie. I actually live in the suburbs, but I go up to Boston. I ride the commuter rail up there and, use the streets and the subways. My concern is, through my just experience, is there going to be any possible enforcement of people like the bikers when they don't adhere to all these great rules and policies? I appreciate the effort to educate them and to tell, and all the rules that you've laid out there, all would be perfect if they adhered to the rules. So I didn't know if you had, are there people like, do police ride around in the bike lanes and make sure the bikers are doing the right thing? Because I have stepped into a crosswalk and been almost taken out by a bicyclist. And I mean, I'm legally blind. So, I mean, all of this only works if people kind of play by the rules. So I just didn't know if in part of all this discussion or initiatives or push, if there isn't also just some type of enforcement going to happen. I guess that's kind of my concern and comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Much appreciated. We will take that into feedback. I am unsure if that is something we have the answer for right now, but I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks, Deborah. I am going to share a chat question from earlier. And this was related to the commuter rail lines. There were a couple related to the same topic. And why is there more flexibility on southern lines? And why isn't there flexibility for bikes on northern lines as well? There should be flexibility across the board since there are a lot of people who commute with bikes, and there might be a lot more bike commuters coming out of East Boston due to the Sumner Tunnel closure.
So God, I think Mike Muller, Mike, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, so it's really, there's two questions there. So it is true that the Fairmount line and the Old Colony lines are geographically located on the south side. In this instance, that happens to be a coincidence. The factor that makes bikes possible on all trains on those lines is the full high-level platforms that are on those lines. And I just note that there's other south side lines that don't have the full high-level platforms and that do not have the all-day, all-train bike policy. And unfortunately, on the north side, we just don't have any lines that have full high-level platforms along the length of the line. So that's the first item. And the second question was about the crowding that we're expecting, the additional ridership due to the Sumner Tunnel closure. And in that situation, really, it's the crowding and the higher ridership that is the source of conflict and the potential unsafe conditions with bikes on trains. So in a situation where we're actually projecting higher ridership, that would not be a situation where we would be looking to relax the bike prohibition on peak period trains and allow more bikes. Actually, it could push it in the other direction, where if we really have substantial crowding on trains, that would be a cause for stricter bike prohibitions. So the rule of thumb is sort of more crowding, fewer bikes, or even more crowding, no bikes, not a situation where we're expecting more ridership on trains, so therefore we would allow more bikes. I don't know if that's helpful.
Thank you, Mike. The next person is calling in from a 617 number. 617-501. Are you able to unmute?
Hi, this is Tom from Somerville. I wanted to make a comment on what Debbie had said earlier about. I'm also a legally blind user of the MBTA, and I suppose I'm asking a similar question to what Debbie had brought up earlier about how are these things going to be enforced. Like, I thought Colleen Flanagan's presentation was great and everything, and I think it's a good way of educating, but I wish that was the reality of what's actually going on the system, because I found out that they don't play. A lot of them don't play by the rules. If I knew that people were wearing their helmets and had their bike lights on, the bells and the rear light and the horn, they're not the people that I'm worried about. The ones I'm worried about are the ones that are not playing by the rules, that all the time ride their bikes on the sidewalk, they go the wrong way in the bike lanes. They don't wear the bike lights at night, and they're gonna hit us. And I also had comments at the last meeting with Elaine Christopher at the last meeting. I commented that the restraint stops that Rob Gupta had brought up are terrible. I mean, you come off the bus, you're right in the bike lane. It absolutely makes no sense to me. And I was just at the last meeting I was at, that there was an individual that was actually hit by a bike messenger, and he was seriously injured, and the bike messenger expected him to take care of the bike messenger's medical bills. And how outrageous is that? And the guy is totally blind, and what a nerve, you know? So I just wondering what anybody had to say as far as what we're going to do about enforcement, because that's something that needs to seriously be addressed. And I'd like to make a suggestion of bringing someone in from Transit Police to discuss this, such as John Donahue from Transit, or Detective Matthew Haney, who's a son of two deaf parents. So I think that they'd be good people to also bring in on the future RTAG meetings. Thanks.
All right, we're gonna hop back to a chat question. This also might be for Mike. Why can't bikes be carried on racks on electric buses, excuse me? Is that a temporary situation as electric buses are tested, or is it a matter of design?
So I would be impressed if Mike knew the answer to this. I actually do not know the answer off the top of my head, but do any of my colleagues in SWA or operations know the answer? If not, we can definitely find out from our vehicle engineering team.
Laura,
Chris, please.
yeah, the Silver Line buses and what were the electric trackless trolley buses were not equipped with bike racks. So that's why we do not have bikes on the Silver Line in the tunnel.
And what about the electric buses, Chris? Do you know the reason for that off the top of your head?
The old electric trolley buses did not have bike racks. I assume that the new ones that we're buying, the battery buses will be, but we'll confirm that.
Okay, yeah, we can find that answer from our vehicle engineering team and follow up. Thanks, Chris. And nice balloons.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we have Ellie Vargas. You are muted, Ellie. All right, maybe we will just skip.
Okay, I got it. Sorry about that. My name is Ellie Vargas. I'm from Greater Boston. I'm an advocate and volunteer. My question is, some of the red line, green line, and blue line are like off track. So I use an older 2015 motorized wheelchair, and sometimes the wheels or the foot plate gets stuck, whether I'm getting in or out of the transportation. And also, I've been seeing a lot more scooters. We haven't discussed it about, like everyone's saying right now, people need to follow these rules. We're trying to activate, but people are just not going to follow them. And more, I see people migrating to Greater Boston and they're having more scooters, and we haven't talked about that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. We have a chat question from Abby Swain. Lately, I've observed many buses in congested areas not pulling over to the curb for boarding/alighting, often due to illegally stopped private vehicles, but sometimes to expedite travel. Any boarding passenger would need to step or roll off the curb, cross the stopping/parking lane, and then board the bus. Vice versa for those alighting. Mounting the curb could be impossible for those in wheelchairs. What are bus drivers told to do if they see a wheelchair user waiting to board or have one on board wishing to alight?
I can take this one, Kat and Abby. So we have had some pretty long-standing policies and trainings in place to address this particular issue that really stemmed from concerns about vehicles being parked in bus stops that prevent buses being able to pull to the curb. As you said, Abby, what this does is it forces passengers to exit the bus into directly into the roadway. And for passengers waiting at a bus stop to step off of the sidewalk and into the roadway, for a number of us, depending on the number of riders with disabilities, depending on the disability, for example, those of us who use wheelchairs, this may not be possible, or it may be quite dangerous. So operators are trained to do a few things. If they are not able to pull into the designated bus stop, they are asked to look to see if there's a safe alternative very close to that stop. Perhaps there is curb space, a few dozen yards down the street, or perhaps there's an adjacent driveway to the stop. If they're able to pull up there, they're required to do so, and then make sure folks that were waiting at the bus stop know that they are in this slightly alternate location, and to provide assistance over to anyone who may need it. If there is no alternate safe curb space or a safe driveway space, operators are permitted to board and allow riders to exit in the street, but they are required to make sure that the bus is parked in as protective a way as possible, so that another vehicle could not pass through on the side of the bus where a ramp or passengers are exiting. And again, they are trained that they will likely, though not always, need to assist riders to or from the bus stop safely. So we have a lot of training on this. This is an issue we monitor with our internal accessibility monitoring program. We measure how often does a bus operator encounter a blocked bus stop. But I will say this is a persistent challenge. One, we also really ask our partners in the cities and towns to help us with enforcement. There's a great bus stop law on the books that allows transit traffic departments and local police departments to ticket and tow vehicles that are idling or stopped in our bus stops. Our transit police are able to do the same thing. And so the more help we can get on enforcement is really valuable to us and our riders.
Thank you, Laura. Next is Anthony.
Oh, Anthony.
Anthony, you are muted. All right, Anthony, we'll come back to you. Next person with their hand raised, it's calling in from a 61771.
Price.
Oh, you're on muted.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, you have me now? Sorry about that.
No worries.
My name's Anthony Andriotola. I'm a totally blind user of the MBTA for the past 25 years. And I just kind of want to take a minute just to try to it's very difficult for a totally blind person to participate in Zoom with equal access, just so folks know. It's very it's a very difficult process for me. So hopefully I can get through this. I just like to say that I sat in on the focus group last week with the folks from UMass and Northeastern, and it was pretty informative. And it really kind of, for me, it really showed that how little blind people are being considered with these bus stops and bike lanes. There's a very big disconnect with the city of Boston, other municipalities, and the blind community. These stops should have really been designed, with the ADA as the main focus, because most of the new designs are not ADA compliant. I'm not an expert on the ADA, but I can tell you this, that when there's bicycles riding on the sidewalk, a blind person, is a risk of death or serious injury. And I'm the guy that the other fellow talked about that was hit by the bike courier. I've been injured by bicycles. This is pre-bike lane. It's very I don't even know what the bike lanes are in these new designs. It's so unsafe for a blind person to take a bus in the city of Boston right now. I don't know how these conversations keep going forward without really kind of putting the brakes on and saying, wow, what are we doing? What are we doing to a community that has no other option? We can't drive, we can't ride a bike. That bus is our only way of transport, and we're being severely put at a disadvantage. It's dangerous, a hazard. Anytime the bike goes to the right side of a bus, it puts a blind person at high risk. And I really think the focus of the MBTA and the city of Boston needs to be on making sure that the blind community is safe, rather than bicycles have equal access to the roads. And just in the city of Boston's presentation about bikes should only ride on the sidewalk when it's safe. It's never safe for a blind person when a bicycle is on the sidewalk. And I really take offense to that. And that should really be taken out of the presentation. I won't go on and on, but I just want people to know there are blind people out here, and we feel strongly about this, and we are being put at a disadvantage. And if it comes down to a class action lawsuit, I will personally put up the funds to hire the attorney to go into federal court and seek an injunction to stop some of these bus stops if they do actually continue to be built. And with that, I'll leave you all, and thank you for your work and all you're trying to do, but I really think you're missing the boat. And I hope people kind of take a breath and take a minute to pause and think of what you're doing before you act. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Oh, yeah.
I am going to hop to a comment that is in the chat from Sandy Dermaskin. There are literally places where bus stop and bike lane and turn lane and crosswalk are all at the exact same corner. It doesn't seem like users understand who has the right of way and how they should properly negotiate this. So much more clarity and education seems needed for all, in my opinion. Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we have someone calling in from a 617-719 number.
Hello, this is Ann McKinnon. I'm a cyclist. My brother also happens to use a scooter to get around. I am very happy to have access to the rapid transit lines with my bike. I don't have a car, so it helps me get around. I think there needs to be a lot more information about the rules for bikes on the T. I think people would like to do the right thing. They just don't know what is the right thing. What are the rules? I happen to know the rules because I did a brochure years ago for the Bicycle Coalition on bikes on the T rules. But there needs to be a lot more information, either brochures, website, but mostly in the stations and on the cars. And there needs to be stickers on the cars saying that you're supposed to be in this, in the end cars, the number of bikes per train, how to secure your bike on the commuter rail. Just a lot more information. If it were easy to find that information, I think a lot more cyclists would be in compliance and be a lot more respectful about the space that they take up and the conflicts that they create. So I encourage the T to significantly increase the information and signage about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going to read a chat from Jim Taza. They shared, I'm disabled. I ride a bike. The problem I have is the electric unicycles that go about 30 miles an hour. I'm afraid of these things. One of the disabled people is going to get hurt. Thank you, Jim. Yep. And next we have a 617-501 number.
Yep, I'm gonna mute myself.
Yes. Oh, you were just unmuted. And you are muted now. There we go.
Okay, I'm muted right now.
Nope, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I have a question to system-wide accessibility. This is actually a question towards to Catherine Quigley. Is it possible to have one of the bus stops evaluated at the floating stop in Somerville? It's actually on Holland Street at Cameron Avenue. It's a floating stop, but I don't think it was well designed. It's not, you wouldn't like compare it to the floating stops like in Comm Ave that are fully equipped with a fence and plenty of area to be waiting in. It's badly. I don't think it's very well designed. And is there a way that if like in cases like that could be that particular floating stop could be evaluated and have some judgment as to whether it's safe or not, because there are no fences on it. There's no back fence on it to separate the bike lane. There's no bench there. There's not even a bus stop sign. And I also heard that the bench was also taken out by an automobile that went onto the floating stop and took out the bench. So I was just wondering if that could be somewhat evaluated. I suppose it's a question towards Catherine and Laura, I guess.
Hi, Tom. We can certainly take a look at the stop. As you know, the municipality owns and operates that stop, but we can look at it with service planning and safety and see if there's anything we can do about it.
Okay, because I think that particular floating stop is not. I don't think it was well designed. You definitely can't compare it to the floating ones on Comm Ave that were well designed. That actually have the fence to separate the bike lane. That's got a tactile where you cross from the floating stop back to the sidewalk on Comm Ave. It's not. You guys just have to see it to really get across what I'm talking about and everything.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I was mentioning the UMass Amherst Northeastern Research Project is so that we can inform guidelines to have a set MBTA standard. I know you already participated in that, but one of the things that we want to do is try to push a more uniform standard so that the stops are safer.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because it'd really be nice if you could take a look at that, because I think I think people in system accessibility are going to go like, what? Because this particular one is just weird, and especially where an automobile had taken out the bus bench that was there, and there's not even a bus. So there's like no bench, there's no bus stops, there's not even a bus stop sign there currently. So I think it like took out everything, whatever this automobile that came up onto the floating stop, and that's very unsettling. And you're waiting for the bus and you get somebody speeding on the road and running over the floating stop.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks.
There are two chat comments. The first one is from Susan Backstrom. Rules for bikes on the T and rules for bikes on the road and rules for this intersection. Making more sense of this is really important. Thank you, Susan. And next we have a question from Jeff Rosenblum. I was under the understanding that there is a bus stop is blocked button on the AFC interface that is available to bus drivers to use when a bus stop is blocked and that data used to be tracked. Curious if this tool is still available to drivers. Does anybody on SWA know a response to that? If not, we will look into it.
So yes, that is a tool that rolled out about almost a decade ago now, a little bit more. It is something that largely sort of fell out of popularity, mainly because in order to flag a bus stop as being blocked, the operator had to really interact with the equipment on the bus quite a bit. They had a key and several pieces of information, which for obvious reasons is challenging for a bus operator given all of the other tasks they have. But I will say we have begun looking at that again, recognizing the importance of collecting that data, not just for blocked vehicles by stops that are blocked by vehicles, but also snow in the wintertime. So we're working with some of our technical folks to see if we can bring that back in a slightly easier to use format. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Laura. Is there anybody else who would like to raise their hand to ask a question or share a concern?
Actually, Kat, we have a question / comment from Reggie Clark. I have him on the phone.
Great.
Just
Hi,
one
Reggie.
second. Reggie, you have the floor.
My question, Catherine, is I have a situation where I'm crossing Harvard Street instead of in Brookline, and the bikes are coming down the street and they don't stop. They don't stop at all when the cars are stopping, you know. And for some reason, it seems to be there's no rule making them stop. If you're gonna have a bike, you're supposed to follow the same rules as the automobile. You're supposed to stop, you know.
Thanks, Reggie.
Thank you.
And next we have a 617-501 number calling in. You are currently muted. There you go.
I think somebody asked earlier about the about block bus stops. Were they referring to the transit master that the bus driver sends to the to operations if there's a parked car on the bus stop? Is that what they asked about a little earlier? Because I think I'm trying to answer the question that they're supposed to be doing that. Laura, I guess it's a question to Laura. Did somebody ask a little earlier about in regards to block bus stops and on the automated messaging that the drivers send from the transit master on board the bus and everything?
Laura, do you want to hop in?
Laura might be caught up on something. I want to take it. Yeah. I could jump in. To be honest, Tom, I can say that the policy and the ability for operators to report blocked bus stops through the transit master still exists. Bus operators are required to continue doing that. But to be honest, I can't say if this addresses the comment that was made because I was Assistant Reggie over here, so I might have missed the mark there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's right, Rob. What I had said in response to Jeff's, I think, similar question was that had been in place for a number of years. It faded out of popularity largely because operators really had to take their hands off the wheels and interact with the transit master quite a bit to log that information, which an additional task for them to navigate. But I think this is something we are looking at again to see if we can resurrect it in a way that works for operators.
Now, Laura, I understand that that to get into the menu itself, it was very cumbersome that they had to go into one menu and then a sub menu supposedly to actually make the automated report. Is that correct? Or was it a lot of push buttoning to get into different sub menus of the transit master? It really made it complicated.
Tom, you are correct. Yeah, it still is a little bit of a cumbersome process, and I think, that has played a little bit of a role in probably the decrease in reports that we're receiving. But we have received feedback from both operators and riders that a lot of these block stops are really coming down to meal delivery and rideshare apps
which unfortunately those are pretty tricky to enforce because of the short amount of time that they're actually parked in the stops. But yeah, to answer your actual question, the way that they actually interact with the transit master, yeah, that hasn't changed. They do have to go through a couple steps to make that report.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
Next, I have a chat directed towards Rob from Abby Swain. Rob, I believe the MBTA bus stop design guidelines date from 2013 and are marked draft. Updating and finalizing that document should be an important way to improve and standardize municipal approaches to integrating bus stops and bike lanes. Currently, there is a variety of approaches that must be confusing to bus passengers and to bicyclists. Thank you, Abby. And next we have Joanne.
Hi there. I was wondering, do you guys know if somebody from the bus riders union attended tonight?
I don't for that, Joanne.
They would have been the people to be here, considering we're discussing bikes and city driving. Even out here in the hinterlands, out here in Braintree, there are bike lanes now. In order to get anything, and in order to communicate with these guys, they've got to be part of since they're part of the problem, they've got to be part of the solution. The other thing which also came up, we're talking about blocked bus stops. Most of what I run into are parked cars at JP Center and at Quincy Center. I did something I'd never done before last Friday, and other than yelling at people who are pulling to the bus stop, "Hey, bus is coming in about 5 minutes," it's like, get out of here. And they don't get it. And sometimes they don't care. They just sit there and go take their kid off to Taekwondo. I don't care if they're going to be there for 3 minutes. I've lost buses that way. But I did call Quincy Police. I don't know if it's going to work for anybody else. I called the Quincy Police Department and gave them the make, model, and number. And everybody left. There were 2 people who were live parked. They heard me giving their plate number to the police, and they left. It might just work. I think I'll try it again. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you, Joanne. I have a chat from Arca Samantha. What are the possible approaches? Those are the Transportation Authority and Transportation Department are taking to update bus policy and transportation policy. And what is the driving policy update for all 4-wheeler drivers and also bus drivers? Does anyone want to hop in on this or move on to the next comment?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first piece of that?
Yes. What are possible approaches that the Transportation Authority and Transportation Department are taking to update bus policy and transportation policy?
So I think first and foremost, not exactly policy, but design standards. The design standards that Rob Guptill mentioned for best practices when it comes to bus stop designs and upgrades are going to integrate a lot of specific details about bike lanes and a bunch of considerations about how to make the installation of bike lanes as safe and accessible for transit users, including people with disabilities, as possible. So internally, we've learned a lot over the last few years, and we work with Rob's team to provide feedback and recommendations to our city and partners in the cities and towns. But that's not really documented anywhere. Those best practices aren't captured anywhere. So getting that design guide published and out into the hands of folks making decisions will be huge. in terms of basic policies on when vehicles are allowed in stations and on vehicles, we don't anticipate any major changes to the policies that we just discussed. Again, as Mike Muller mentioned earlier, we really keep an eye on crowding and ridership. So as that increases, we just want to make sure that we are prioritizing the needs of our transit riders and folks with disabilities, and that may mean curbing the allowance of bringing bikes onto vehicles. But in general, our policies have been set for a while, but certainly they're all subject to feedback from meetings like this one and others.
Great, thanks, Laura. And I believe you may have the answer for this next question. Are electric bikes allowed on T buses or trains? Because I know someone who uses one as a mobility device.
That is a great question, and I would ask that any of my colleagues jump in if I am incorrect about this, but as of right now, we do not have an official written policy on electric bikes. Like with anything, if an employee determines or believes that a situation is unsafe for reasons related to operations or the safety of staff or others, they can make that call in coordination with our OCC, but I do not believe we have a general prohibition on electric bikes. But again, if any of my colleagues know more, please jump in.
Speaking from a commuter rail perspective, Laura, you're correct. We don't have an official policy on electric bikes. Although I would note that we have observed that some of our peer systems, including Amtrak, have initiated prohibitions of electric bikes on board trains. And we do receive some customer complaints about electric bikes, normally just due to the space that they take up on the train. So we are monitoring the situation and evaluating a potential policy change in the future. But at this moment in time, there is no official policy on electric bikes on trains.
And hi there, I'm Pete Roby. I'm the Deputy Director of Active Transportation and Station Access. I would just echo that we don't have a specific policy on electric bikes. The policy as stated on our website is that motorized vehicles or motorized bikes are not permitted on the MBTA. And I think we're aware that it's a little bit unclear as to what exactly that means. And so I'll be sort of working with my team in the next, the coming months to develop a policy on e-bikes and really clarify that so there's no question going forward.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, team. Does anybody have any other concerns or questions? Yes. 516-637 number. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted now. You were just unmuted. There you go.
Oh, hi. Okay, so I have a question. I live in Cambridge. I use the red line. I use a power wheelchair, and I've noticed that across the red line stops, the distance between the car and the platform varies a lot, and also the height kind of varies a lot, and it makes it very difficult to get off and on at some stations. So I was wondering how the MBTA keeps track of that and what the plans are for smoothing those things out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that feedback. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Laura, do you want to hop in on that at all?
I certainly can. So I believe you are referring to what we call the platform gap on our subway, at some of our subway stations. And this gap can take the form of a vertical gap, which is either a step up or a step down, or a horizontal gap, which is a step forward. The T has done a lot of work over the last 15 years to upgrade the track beds throughout most of the system to reduce these gaps. There are a number of spots where
I'm done asking my
but due to really complicated realities within the infrastructure, that pretty sizable gap remains. The most infamous example of this is at Charles MGH Station, towards the far end of one of the platforms. The vertical gap is quite significant. There's actually a very large project in the early stages that will eventually address this. We also have a number of gap concerns in the Southwest corridor on the Orange Line, or the southernmost part of the Orange Line. And again, there's a similar, very significant plan in its infancy that will eventually address that. So there aren't a lot of easy answers. We're actually also, in addition to that, going to be doing a system-wide gap survey at some point this fall to really capture up-to-date data on where we have issues. But I would say for everybody who's not already aware, if you are somebody that struggles with gaps or would have trouble boarding or exiting because of them, staff are trained, all staff, station staff, motor persons on the train, to provide assistance boarding by putting down a portable bridge plate. If you can't find a staff member to assist you, one will be sent to you quickly if you use the station call box. And there's more information on our website about this under mbta.com/accessibility, and be happy to talk more at any point if you have questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Deborah, you are next.
Hi, yeah, I guess I just wanted to know how we follow up with a lot of the issues that some of your guests here have expressed, and after we've expressed them, we got thank you for your concerns and moved on to the next questions, which I appreciate that you might not have the answers, but it seems like there's a lot of people who have disabilities and who are blind on this call. And I appreciate this time with you, but I'd like to see that there's true follow-up and addressing of some of the issues that we've raised. And I'm just wondering, do I attend the next meeting to find out if the serious concerns are in fact getting addressed at a level where they're going to get solved?
So I can respond to this, although I certainly would not suggest that this is an adequate response. I want to start by saying that conversations about bike lanes and accessibility are happening nearly on a daily basis within the MBTA and between the MBTA and our municipal partners. This has, from my perspective, emerged as one of the highest accessibility priorities over the last 3 to 4 years. We have several initiatives underway that I think are going to result in some important step forwards. The bus stop design guidelines are one of those. Some of the longer term vehicle design changes that Mike mentioned earlier on commuter rail is another. But ultimately, I think one of the biggest things that we are going to be continue working on is raising awareness about these concerns and issues, which is why we were really, really excited to be invited to have this discussion today. Again, a lot of the big decisions around bike lane infrastructure, those are really being led and ultimately decided by our municipal partners. So being able to provide information and feedback and concerns to them and sharing your concerns with them and others at the state and at MassDOT, who set their own guidelines that many cities and towns look to, is, I'm hopeful, will be impactful. None of this has easy or quick solutions. I know enforcement's been mentioned several times. This is something that I know Mike and his team are thinking about within the commuter rail network, but in terms of enforcements on city streets, that would take a very long-term kind of culture change, and with limited resources, that I imagine will be a lift. So I think we all have a role here in really advocating and educating folks on the impacts of some of these very real and long-lasting design decisions people are making, as well as why enforcement is so important. So I know that's not a satisfying answer, but that is, I think, where we are at, to be honest.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Deborah. Joanne, you're next.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, just a couple of follow-ups. One on what Laura just said. I'm hoping at some point we can have a meeting, a discussion, a dialogue with the Bike Riders Union. They have always been in the process of trying to get their needs met by the cities and towns. I think we need to have them come in and understand the problems that exist between the people with disabilities and the bus driver, and the bicycle riders, including speed and, really things that they may not think of that need to be dealt with. The other thing was, very quickly, the young man from Cambridge, the red line is my primary, it's my first, my primary subway line. It helps to know the territory. There are some stations that have perennial problems. Quincy Center has had vertical problems for well over a year now, and I get that. Always ask for a bridge plate. However, if you are on a train and you find that there's a distance that a gap that you can't get over to get out of the train, what you need to do is be parked at the end of the train where the emergency button is. And if you can't get to the emergency button, you ask somebody on the train to push that button for you so you can get off of the train. People are usually very, very quick and very helpful as far as cooperating to get someone to the point where that you get a bridge plate to get off the train, so you don't end up like in East Nowhere that you have no idea where you are. That's basically it. The only thing you can do is either know the station or be ready to ask for help when you need to get off and you can't. That's it.
Thanks, Joanne. And next we have the 516637 number. You are currently muted.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the feedback. I'm looking forward to that gap survey. The second issue that I wanted to raise was I use the MBTA.com website to check for outages or any other issues. And this summer, when I was traveling to Europe, it turned out that the MBTA.com website is completely blocked. There's no information that you can access. If you go to MBTA.com, it just says unauthorized. So I'm wondering if the MBTA is aware of this, what steps they can take to fix this, and whether the tourism industry as well in Massachusetts knows that anyone traveling from Europe cannot look up any information about the MBTA. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any response, or that's definitely something that the team will look into?
Yeah, this is the first that we're hearing of such an issue. Can I ask where exactly which country you were traveling in, if you don't mind?
So this was both Austria and Poland. My guess is that this might be related to the cookie laws in Europe. However, it looks like it's just a blanket ban outside of the US.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, we will pass that to our customer technology department. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Alan Barr, you're next.
Yes, hi. I'm visually impaired, and I just want to thank the people for speaking up for the visually impaired. I recently, this week, traveled the train down from Leominster, Mass. Into Cambridge. And when I got into, first of all, getting on the train up in Leominster was difficult because it's a step up, and the help wasn't very good there. They got upset with me because I was standing in the wrong spot, which I had no idea where to be. I was on the platform. Then when I got down into Cambridge, into Porter Square to get onto the Red Line, there was absolutely no help there. I had to depend on passing by people to help me. The elevator was a little bit out of the way too. And I depend on the trains. I use them a lot. I depend on the buses. I use them a lot. I've had some close calls getting off the bus with passing by bikes. I've had, they speed up to try to get through the red lights, and they don't care who's crossing or whatever. They just go right in front of you. I live in Braintree, which I'm always on Quincy Avenue, and Quincy Avenue, where it's Southern Artery meets Quincy Avenue right there, the intersection. There's been some fatalities there, and they have done nothing to upgrade the light system there, which is terrible. And it's very difficult to cross that intersection. You got to be very careful. There's no, it's very faint when it's says to walk, and you really have to be paying attention. But a lot of times there's passing vehicles and that are loud, and it makes it difficult. So I've reached out to, I won't mention a name. I don't want to get anybody in any situations, but I've reached out about that situation, about the lights up and down Quincy Avenue and on Southern Artery. They're terrible and dangerous. There's telephone poles in the middle of the street. I mean, in the middle of the sidewalks. And as I said, I'm visually impaired, so it's difficult navigating around all that stuff. So I've said what I said, and thank you for the people that reached out for the blind, and thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for sharing. We have a chat comment from Jeff Rosenblum. It's worth noting that innovations on bus stop designs, especially floating bus stops, is an issue municipalities and transit agencies are grappling with across the country. I'd be happy to share what I've been collecting about that if it's useful. There was an evaluation program in Montgomery County designed and implemented in collaboration with the blind community that could be useful to share if there's interest. Thanks, Jeff. We have time for, oh, go for it, Laura.
Yeah, I would just say, Jeff, not surprisingly, we would be more than interested in seeing that. And yeah, I want to piggyback on what you just shared, is that the challenges associated with floating bus stops in particular. We had the opportunity to meet with a number of transit planners and designers from Canada several months ago, and there are numerous efforts underway to figure out better solutions for floating bus stops. So we've been connecting with them to share ideas as well. So definitely not a problem unique to Boston. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Laura. We have time for about 1 or 2 more comments. Does anybody have anything else to share? If not, we can end a few minutes early so you can all enjoy your night. Thanks for attending. If you have more that you would like to share or think of something else, please reach out to me at rtagboston@bostoncil.org or by phone number at 978-893-8100. Again, that is 978-893-8100. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your night and have a wonderful holiday and long weekend. And thank you so much for coming.